All right, guys, welcome back. Obviously, I'm not here this week, so you get YouTube Coach Rhodes. We're going to talk a little bit about your expectations for this week and what you're going to be doing, some next week, because you're going to need to get prepared for next week to starting this week. We're getting close to the end of 9 weeks, and so there's a whole lot of stuff going on. This week, we're going to talk about level 16, which is the last level that we will have for this semester. So that you are understanding this, your mission 16 will be live on Thursday. When you come to class, it'll be there. I've got it ready to be posted. There will not be a code with it, so you don't need a code to log in, so there won't be any problems with people getting locked out. But because I'm not here and I can't reassign things, there will be no retakes. We might be able to get you a retake next week if you absolutely bomb it, but you need to try to do your very best on this so that that doesn't happen, because there is a lot of stuff that's going to be going on. You may not have time to get to it. This mission and this level will be the last grade that goes in to assess whether or not you have to take the end of the 9 weeks test. So you need to try to get this completed, and you need to try to do your very best on this mission, especially if you're kind of one of those that's on the bubble as far as getting your work done. I will be available via email. You can still send me emails if you have questions or problems with this stuff, but for the most part, I'm kind of expecting you to figure this out on your own. I'm going to do the whole lesson here on this video. I will post the YouTube links for you guys. I'll probably put them up on the board for you this week, and then for the our sub, whoever it is, so that they don't have to worry about doing that. But because I'm not going to be here this week, it's going to be really hard for you to ask me questions live. So obviously you guys can work together on this stuff, just like you always do. You can use the videos that are assigned on, well, they're not assigned, but the videos that go along with it on Delta Math if you get stuck and confused on things. Obviously the examples on Delta Math will help you out, and then your notes as well. So take good notes as I'm going through this stuff. If I write it down, you write it down. You know how that kind of works. Now, because the end of 9 weeks test is next week, and it covers levels 9 through 16. It's a lot. It's 8 levels. It is a much longer level that you'll be working on next week. But because it is a longer level, there's 2 things that are going to go along with it. The first is that it's going to be worth 100 points. So that's 5 times the normal level as far as the score goes. And because it is a longer level, it's going to take you probably about twice as long as it normally does. I'm putting that to you live on Wednesday. So that will pop up for you guys on Wednesday for you to be able to work on it. That means that on Friday won't be a true free Friday because I won't be here, and because the level is so long, and everyone, whether you were exempt from taking the test or not, is required to finish the level. That will be your last grade for the 9 weeks if you're not required for the mission. I'm giving you extra time to work on it, and you'll have next week, you'll have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to work on it. But I'm going to go ahead and let that go live this Wednesday, so you can work on it on Thursday after you finish your mission. You can work on it Friday if you finished your level and you finished your mission from this week. You'll have something to be working on Friday. So just a reminder, one more time, everyone has to do the level, whether you're exempt from taking the mission or not. You have to complete next week's level. So obviously everybody has to do this week's level and mission, but next week some of you will be exempt from the mission. Some of you actually, I was looking over the grades this last weekend. By the way, I'm recording this during Thanksgiving week. I was looking at your grades, and I'm really pleased with a lot of your grades here in Algebra 2. Got a lot of A's and a lot of B's, so I'm really happy with that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and talk about these quadratic equation with complex solutions. This is kind of pulling a little bit of what we did last week with the complex solutions. Some of this is actually maybe even a little bit easier because we're just dealing with kind of the discriminant to find the nature of the roots rather than having to find all the roots. So this is, remember where we talked about discriminants initially, it'll help you out. This is where it helps you out. So let's get to it. Follow along on your notes, and I'll have it all up here on the screen for you, hopefully. So the one big thing, we're going to talk about quadratic proportions. This is where we're going to use the discriminant that we learned before, and that's really easy. We're going to solve quadratic proportions, which is a little bit different, and then word problems, which I know that you guys are super excited about. I know. You just have to draw pictures sometimes. You have to really think about what they're trying to ask you. So you'll be able to get through all this. Remember, we're just eating an elephant, and we do it one bite at a time. So let's kind of look at the nature of the roots. That's the first thing. And this is pretty simple. These are kind of set up in multiple choice. And so what they've given us here is they've given us a regular trinomial quadratic. But whenever you see determine the nature of the roots, or you could say solutions, sometimes it'll say that on there. What we're doing is we're just find the discriminant. And to find the discriminant, remember we use the discriminant formula, which is b squared minus 4ac. You guys have been doing that long enough. You should have that part memorized by now. So if we're looking at this, obviously we have our a, our b, and our c here. And so we're just going to plug those things in. So we have b squared, which is 8 squared. We have minus 4 times negative 2 times negative 42. Now, you can grab your calculators and you can work that out, or you can wait about 2 seconds and I'll just put the correct answer up here. You multiply all this stuff together, you work it out, and you get negative 272. Negative 272. Now, here's what you need to do. If the discriminant is negative, then you have an imaginary solution. All right? The discriminant's negative. If negative, it's imaginary, which is your A plus BI type stuff. So if it's negative, it's imaginary. So this is a really important thing, the discriminant chart. Okay, right down here on the bottom, put a star on that so you remember to go back to it. Because now you can look and see if your discriminant is a certain thing, what it actually is. So if it's negative, we just talked about it, imaginary. Imaginary number. If your discriminant, you work your problem out and it equals 0. If your discriminant 0, then you're going to have one solution. And what it means is you're going to have 2 real equal solutions. So when you get it, it's going to be, you'll have like, if you were to factor it, you're going to have like x plus 5 times x plus 5. So if you set both that, you'll have x is equal, your roots are going to be negative 5. They're both the same, okay? So you're going to have one solution there. If your discriminant is positive, you have 2 real solutions. And this is what the majority of the stuff that we've done so far is. You have 2 real solutions, where basically you have x is equal to negative 2 or x is equal to 5. That's what most of the stuff that you've had has been like that. So we're going to look at a couple things here. Let's write a few examples down here on the bottom. So we'll write them down here. So we'll do some examples. So like if your discriminant was 36, then it would be rational. So like right here, rational, real, rational. 16, be rational. 49, rational. What are you noticing about all of those? 36, 16, 49, they're all what? Perfect squares. So they're perfect squares on there. So, your perfect square is going to be 4 and 9 and 16 and 25 and 36, 49, 64, 81, 100. And we can keep going and going and going, but, kind of learn your squares on that stuff. If you have, say, 21, that's not a square. That's going to be irrational. 35. What do you think it is? It's not a perfect square. It's also irrational. You'll pick up on a lot of this stuff as you go along. This is one of these things where the more that you do it, the more you're just going to recognize it. So looking at your rational, irrational, if it's going to reduce down to, so if this is what's inside the, if you can reduce it from your, putting it underneath the square root sign, under your radical, then it's going to be rational or irrational. So that's where we're getting through on this stuff. So as you're working through, because remember, this, your discriminant, when we're looking at the big quadratic formula, the quadratic formula, this is what's underneath the radical. So you're square rooting this. So if this is a perfect square, then your answer is going to be rational. If it's not a perfect square, then your answer is going to be irrational because you're going to still have a square root part in your answer. And if it's negative, then it's imaginary because you're going to have an I that you're going to have to pull out of the square root. So that's why you can look at these things on this stuff. So let's look at some examples of quadratic proportions. So that's all just for that. All last part was for solving the nature of the root or the nature of the solution. So now let's look at a proportion. When we deal with proportions, you're always going to have something that looks like this. You're going to have a fraction or an equation set up like it's being divided by something, and that's going to equal another fraction or equation that looks like it's divided by something. So we'll look at these steps to do here. First, you're going to cross multiply. This is what you learned back in like middle school, maybe late elementary. Cross multiply means I'm going to multiply this times this, and I'm going to multiply this times this. All right, so we're going to kind of rewrite these little problems back out. So let's rewrite it like this. I'm going to have x times x minus 7, and then I have 5 times x minus 4. And so if I multiply, I'm going to distribute here. I get x squared minus 7x. And here, if I distribute, I get 5x minus 20. All right. Now we'll just set these things back to being equal. So this started off being equal. So this equals this, and this equals that. So we'll just rewrite it as x squared minus 7x equals 5x minus 20. Now we'll just put it in standard form because that's their next step. Get the quadratic equation in standard form, which is what we worked on like 2 weeks ago, putting things in standard form. So we're just going to move all this over. So I'm going to subtract 5x from this side. I'm going to add 20, and I'm going to do the same thing over here. So what I get is I get x squared, because I don't have an x squared piece to mess with, minus 12x plus 20 equals 0. Now that's in standard form. Okay, so now I can solve it with the quadratic formula. I've got my A, B, and C pieces here. And so when we do our quadratic formula, we just substitute all that in. So we have I'm going to write the quadratic up here in case you've forgotten it. It's negative b plus or minus square root of our discriminant formula, which is b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Good. Glad y'all remember that. So we just plug all this stuff in. I'm going to fast forward through this because you have done this a lot, just plugging this stuff in. So I'm going to fast forward it, and we get, when we solve with the quadratic, so that's step 4, we get that our answers are 10 and 2. So that's how we solve a quadratic proportion. Just follow these steps. So again, probably want to go ahead and star that. That's an important thing when you have a quadratic proportion. You guys have been picking this stuff up real quickly and real easily. It's just plugging the different pieces in and then going from there. So because I want to spend a little bit more time on quadratic word problems. Quadratic word problems wind up being exactly the same thing as we have just done, what we have been doing, but you've got to write out the problem yourself based off of what it's telling you. So just follow your steps and you'll be fine on all that. Quadratic word problems, okay? This is what a quadratic word problem looks like. When 21 is subtracted from the square of a number, the result is 4 times the number. Find the positive solution. Now, this one, it's going to give you 2 solutions, but they want to know what the positive solution is. So look at the whole question. Rather than putting 2 answers, I'm only going to have 1 answer unless there's 2 positive answers. But I'm just guessing off of this one because it says find the positive solution, that there's only going to be one. One of them is going to be negative or one of them is going to be imaginary. Usually they're both imaginary, but let's look at it. So let's write it out. So it says when 21 is subtracted from the square of a number. So obviously my number is going to be x, because I don't know what that number is. So anywhere I have the word number in there, I'm going to have an x. So what they're going to tell me is the square of a number. So the square of x is x squared. And then I'm going to subtract 21. Okay, so this part right here. This part right here is this part right there. The result is an equal sign. So result equals 4 times the number. So what do you think 4 times the number is? Right, 4x. 4x. So now I have one of the problems we've been doing all day long for the last 3-4 weeks. So I'm going to subtract 4x from this side because I need to get it in standard form. Remember, we have to put things in standard form so we can solve it using the quadratic equation. So I have x squared minus 4x minus 21 equals 0. So now I have it in standard form. Now I've got my a, which is 1, my b, which is negative 4, and my c, which is negative 21. Solve it with your quadratic equation. So you're just going to plug it into your negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. I'm going to plug that in. You can work that out, but I'm not going to because I have the answers already. I don't want to overwhelm you. I want to give you guys time to get all this stuff done. So I'm just telling you that you're going to get 7 and negative 3. Now, because remember, we got to do the plus or minus part here. That's why you get two distinct answers. So 7 and negative 3, but what did it ask me for? The positive solution. So this is my positive solution because that's a negative one. I don't want that. I just want the positive. If they ask you for all the answers, then that's what you're going to put 7 and 3. They just ask you for the positive, put 7. They just ask you for the negative solution, you put the negative 3. So this all winds up going to do the same stuff we've done over and over again. All right. Oh, there you go if you need to copy it just a little bit more. This one, you're going to like this one. And by like, I mean you're going to be like, oh, why do we have to do this? With rectangle area. So this goes back to, hopefully all of you have done geometry, or at least remember this from 8th grade math or 7th grade math, or probably even 5th and 6th grade math. I don't know, because you're going to have to know what the area of a rectangle is. So it says the width of a rectangle. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a rectangle because I'm dealing with a rectangle here. It tells me that the width of a rectangle, so this is my width and this is my length, tells me the width of the rectangle is 3 units less than the length. So 3 units less than the length. So I'm just thinking that because I don't know what the length is, that the length is probably just going to be a big fat X sitting up here. Which means that my width is going to be 3 units less. Units less, 3 less. So that's going to be minus 3. So it's going to be, my width is going to be X minus 3. All right. And it tells me that the area is 18 units. So here's where you have to remember your geometry stuff. What is the area of a triangle? I mean, a rectangle, not a triangle. A rectangle. The area of a rectangle is length times width. And I know that that's going to be equal to, it tells me, 18 units. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to substitute X for L and W for, and X minus 3 for W. And so I'm going to have X times X minus 3 equals 18. And now we're going to just make the equation. We're going to go ahead and distribute, and then we'll put it in standard form. So distribute, so I get X squared minus 3X equals 18. I want to put it in standard form because I'm solving in a quadratic. So minus 18 on both sides gives me X squared minus 3X minus 18 equals 0. Now I got a quadratic equation. Now I have my A, which is 1, my B, and my C, and I can put it all in into the problem. So here's another part where you have to think about this. All right. Here's another part where you have to think about this, and here's where it comes to. Can I have a negative length of something? Not if I'm talking about a shape. I can't have a negative length. I really can't. So I'm really looking for just the positive solution. So I'm going to plug all this into the quadratic. I'm going to plug it into my negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And if you work all that out, again, I'm trusting that you guys are pretty solid and are aware of that. I tell you what, we'll go ahead and we'll work it out, just this one. This is a long problem. There's a lot of parts to it. We'll work it out though. So I have my negative b, which is 3. Negative 3 times negative is 3, plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is going to be negative 3 squared, plus 4 times 1 times negative 18. What I get is I get 3 plus or minus 9 square root of 9 plus, sorry, this should be a minus, not a plus. I wrote it wrong. Plus 4 times 18 is 72. 9 plus 72 over 2. So I get 3. 9 plus 72 is 81. So square root of 81. Remember, it's a plus or minus. So I have 3 minus 9 over 2. And I have 3 plus 9 over 2. So this one is going to give me negative 6 over 2, which is equal to negative 3. This one's going to give me 12 over 2, which is going to give me 6. So my answers are 6 and -3. Now, which one do I use? Think about what I said before I started working this out. I can't have a negative length, so I don't need this one. I'm going to look at this one because my length has got to be positive. So in other words, I'm going to just plug in the 6 for x. So instead of having x is equal to 6, this is equal to 6 minus 3, which is 3. So my length is 6. My width is 3. So it's not just asking you for what the solution is, it's asking you to plug it in. So there's an extra step that goes into there. You just have to be careful with what they're actually asking, because what they want to know is what is the length in units of the rectangle. I can't put in a negative. I can't have a -3 length. I can't have a 0 or a -6 width. So just be aware of that whenever you're doing it. You have to use a little bit of common sense. So you can't have a negative answer for this. So no negative answers. Disregard the negative part whenever you get that. If you have, for some reason, if you'd have 2 positive answers, it would be the length is this or it's this, because there's a potential that you could have that. But most of these are going to make it a little bit easier for you. We're going to have a negative answer and a positive answer. So that's what we got for today. And you guys have, again, you've got this level to do for this week. Wednesday, you'll have the other level will be released to you. Finish this level first, then go back and do the next level. Do the review level after you finish this one. You've got stuff to do on Friday, so it's not a true free Friday unless you just absolutely bust your butts Monday through Thursday. No retakes on this one. Might be able to do a retake next week, but no promises on that. And that's what we've got. Like I said, I'll put the YouTube links up on the board, so if you need to watch this on your own, you can. And good work this week. Keep trying really hard. We're almost done. It's almost Christmas break. You get to have a few weeks off to let your brain rest, relax, and recuperate. But until I see you next week, remember, I love you guys.